I'd like to introduce our commissioners that are here. We'll start with Commissioner-elect Kevin Markey, newly elected. Commissioner Jerry Allender. Commissioner Wayne Justice. And Commissioner Hadaway is joining us remotely. So, hi, Commissioner Hadaway. We also have some dignitaries here. Our state officials, Senator Tom Wright. We have Ms. Caitlin Curry from Debbie Mayfield's office. There's a rumor that Randy Fine is on his way, but he's not quite here yet, but I'm sure he's joining us remotely, so we appreciate his support. And then Ms. Angelique Rinaldi is here from Representative Soroy's office. And I think that's everybody. I'd like to ask at this time for Commissioner Justice to come up and lead us in the pledge.
Please stand at the table. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And without any further ado, I'd like to ask Captain Murray to come up and give us the rundown. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Move the microphone down to a normal guy's height. Thank you, everybody, for coming today. I'll start out by saying that this is 2020. It's a different year. One thing you have to be is flexible, nimble, and change on a moment's notice. And I think we've had to do that as a Port Authority, and we had to do it even with the State of the Port session. We're hopeful to have it at Cruise Terminal 3. We do have some tours for the terminal afterwards, and I hope many of you will go on those tours. But we had some technical issues and staffing issues at the last minute, which forced us back into our meeting room where we've got all of our aides here ready to go. So I appreciate your coming, and thank you for indulging us on that last minute change. And I hope you will still get to do the tour on the terminal and enjoy that great new facility. Whoop. Wait a second. I have the right mouse, guys? Hang on. There we go. I don't like that one. Okay, I'm going to start off. I always like to remind everybody what Port Canaveral is and what we mean to this community and the state. We have a $1.94 billion direct impact on the Central Florida economy. You just look at the sheet. This was done by BREA in 2019, and it's really the last full-blown exercise when we were running on all cylinders, and it really tells you what the impact is to the state. $3.9 billion economic impact to Florida. What we did after the cruise industry shut down, and I'll go into that a little bit more in a subsequent slide, but we engaged BREA to say, what does this mean without cruise in Port Canaveral? And without cruise, we lose $1.2 billion in expenditures, the state, 11,000 total jobs, $400 million in annual wages, and $31 million state and local tax revenue that is not collected because we're not running cruise ships through our port. So this industry is very, very important to our success, very important to our survival. It's been a very different year. I can tell you a lot of stories through the year. We've been very engaged with the lines, very engaged with the government officials, and I'll get into that in a minute. But I think it's really important that we all sink our teeth into how important this port is to our local economy. Now, COVID impact, obviously, I'm not going to dwell on this because everyone in the room has had some sort of an impact, and we're all being guided by similar guidelines, and we've all done similar things. But if you're here at the port, initially our goals were to protect health and safety of employees, our port community, stabilize our operations and ensure our business continuity, make sure that we can continue to run our 24/7 operation as we have all along. Also maintain our state of readiness. You know, if tomorrow the cruise ships come, or we have a Navy ship that wants to come in for an event, we're ready. We have to have this port ready to go on a moment's notice. We just can't lock up and say we'll come back later. That's not the way it works. We also need to manage uncertainties and sustain optimism for the future. As dark as it looks at times right now, we have got a very, very bright future in this port. The cruise lines are all planning major ship exchanges in the future, more ships coming through Port Canaveral. There's reasons why I believe we're going to be at the forefront at the return of cruising, and I can touch on that in a little bit. Other things we did executed new procedures, protocols to mitigate potential spread. We found a product called Impact, which was being used at the Tampa Airport. Tampa Port Authority started using it. We brought it over, and we started spraying all of our terminals with it before the shutdown. It's a product that I guess they call it a bed of nails. It leaves a layer on a surface for 30 days that kills any virus. How do you know if it works? You don't, but we never had any incidents after we started using it. And to this day, Victory Cruise Line still uses it, and they've been operating quite successfully without any cases since the end of April. So I will compliment Lester Bullock and his operation, and the fact that they've taken it very seriously and they're still using this product. That follows in the enhanced cleaning protocols port-wide. We acquired and equipped our employees with PPE. We have them in our warehouse. We reacted early and were able to maintain enough equipment for all of our staff. Right when there was a shortage, we were able to say we were in good shape. We also comply with federal recommendations, government executive orders. As you all know, they've been changing on a regular basis, maybe a little less frequently now than they were in the beginning. And we've reduced our on-site population in this building. This building is built many years ago, and there's a lot of tight spaces in here. So we have employees that can work remote, and we cycle people through the building so we don't have rooms packed full of people on any given day. That said, we've still had cases of positive COVID tests, people here in our building, and we've had to deal with it. The other big project that we had, when all of a sudden you realize 80% of your revenue stream is going to stop in one day, you have to figure, what does that mean for our operations? Well, we had to stabilize the budget, number one. So we had some immediate, back in March, cost mitigation across all departments, all operational areas. You know, cutting unnecessary expenses, no more travel, no more, if you need new pencils, go buy your own. We're not going to, you know, to be an extreme, but we really cut everything we could out of that budget. We also deferred capital projects that we had throughout this year and next year into future dates if they weren't required. We continue with Cruise Terminal 3, North Cargo Berth 8, and Cruise Terminal 8 because those projects were already funded through a bond offering, and because they're already funded, that's restricted funds, and they can only be used for those projects, which gave us the opportunity to keep moving forward and complete those projects, which we have done. We also, after a couple of months, realizing that this wasn't going to be a quick turn, we had to make some very difficult decisions with workforce reductions through job eliminations, furloughs, early retirement, and some folks voluntarily stepped aside. So tough times. It was a tough summer for us, you know, for a port that operates like we do. It's hard to see your friends in this type of situation. So I'd like to take this moment and just show a short video to let everybody know what's been going on here at Port Canaveral since March. It's kind of in the same format that we did last year, which these are our employees, and they're talking about what they've done and how they've managed the operations at the port for the last few months. So I'm going to step aside and let the video roll.
When we began this year, the Canaveral Port Authority was poised for another record-breaking year. From a historical standpoint, the port industry has experiences in dealing with business interruptions. Our main goal during this year was to provide business stabilization. We did this through financial and operational measures. We met with our department heads, and we collaboratively and proactively reduced our operating budget and reduced our capital budget. We've seen positive results this year, and it helped build the framework for next year. Our metrics are solid, and we continue to remain optimistic that the port industry will return to its robust levels that we've seen in the past.
In Port Canaveral, we operate under unified command with the Port Authority, Brevard County Sheriff's Office, Canaveral Fire Rescue, Customs and Border Protection, and the Coast Guard. And we operate under that unified command for multiple reasons: partnerships, coordination, and mainly to achieve the common goal. So we use that no matter what the incident is, including COVID-19, to particularly address potential cruise ships with sick passengers. The biggest difference this year compared to previous years was the lack of face-to-face interaction and the need for PPE, which is personal protection equipment. We were ahead of the curve early on in the pandemic for the Port Authority, and we were ordering PPE early to make sure we had enough for not only staff but for our partners to address any potential issues on cruise ships or within the community. So that was one of the biggest challenges, to be able to make sure that we had enough PPE for our staff, our partners, to be able to respond accordingly. When COVID was starting to approach the United States and getting more recognition in the month of February into March, we had ordered the PPE early on just to make sure that we were ahead of the game. And we also sprung into action working with our HR department and finalizing an infectious disease plan to address not only employees and what PPE they should wear and how they should respond to work, but also working with our IT department on virtual work at home, ways to prevent people from coming into work and working together and still making sure that the work has been completed for the day.
When the COVID pandemic began, the primary focus and mission of our team was and still is to source and stock the central warehouse with critical supplies and PPE needed to keep our employees safe and those who visit Port Canaveral safe. We did encounter some challenges along the way. However, we were able to get all the supplies that we needed, and we were able to keep the warehouse open and fully functional.
We've started with sanitizing all the terminals and doing all the CPA-owned buildings. We did basic cleaning of all the touch points, all the high traffic areas. We cleaned tables, chairs, countertops, doorknobs, and we continue to do this today. The frequency isn't as much as the terminals since they haven't been that active, but all the CPA buildings we continue to do this monthly. Another thing we did is, after everything was cleaned, we wanted to go through the terminals and try to perform some social distancing. Things of like moving tables, moving chairs, putting them in clusters of 2s and 4s, just to give you that extra 6 foot and that little comfort zone. We did that at the terminals. We also did this through all the CPA-owned buildings, our break rooms, our conference rooms, which haven't been used much because we're doing a lot of virtual, but be assured that they're clean anytime you do want to use them. We also went through all the facilities, CPA-owned facilities, and we put in a lot of touch-free, hands-free devices, from paper towels to flush valves and things of that nature. We also went in and installed shields like this at the front lobby. We also put it at the code enforcement at Jetty Park, just for added protective measures. Another thing we did is we went through the terminals and we decided, since they weren't active, we wanted to try to reduce some energy costs. And we went in and raised temperatures, we reduced some lighting systems, we turned off elevators and escalators, anything to help us out in the long run to save money. In looking ahead in the future, we'll continue doing things like this. We'll continue cleaning all the CPA areas, and when cruise returns, we'll make sure that all the terminals are sprayed down and everybody's safe.
When the pandemic hit, we had several approaches. One was looking at what we could do for the employees who were working remotely, and the other was for the employees who actually came into the port. For employees who were coming into work, when the pandemic started, there were many things that we did to make them feel safer. Some of them were related to the physical workplace, like masks and PPE training and setting up the restrooms so that they were touchless and so on, and the plexiglass around different work areas. We also moved certain work areas so that people would not be near one another. We really reinforced the 6-foot rule. But other things were not related to the work in that way. They were also looking at having contactless transactions with the guests was very important, especially at Jetty Park and Exploration Tower. We developed new use of the Shopify. We also decided that it was best not to share any workplaces, and so we made sure that workstations were separate and also that there was enough equipment, that people were not sharing equipment. So we looked at everything we did on a daily basis and how that could be done in a more safe and more efficient way for the staff so that they could all feel very supported.
cruise business is extremely important to the local community and the extended community in Central Florida. We have numerous businesses that are dependent, numerous individuals that are dependent on the cruise industry. The longshoremen, who are the porters that load the bags on and off the ship, provide all the services for fuel, and the fuel suppliers, the folks that are moving stores on and off the ship, food products, anything that goes on that ship for a week sailing. Essentially, some of these ships sail, they're like a small city going to sea for 7 days. There's a lot of material moving back and forth that's not moving right now, and the people that move that material are not working. We also have the guest services such as hotels, restaurants, shuttle buses, taxis, Ubers, all of the ground transportation service providers that make a cruise day happen are all idle at this point. It's been a very, very difficult time, and it's been a huge strain on our local community.
During the pandemic, we've been very busy over here at Port Canaveral. We've been working with all the senior cruise executives on a daily basis through this no sail order, working on daily operations, working on crew repatriations, working on ship provisions for the existing crew members on the ships that are there, and of course itinerary planning with them for both the return to sail operations and future cruise operations at Port Canaveral. Our cruise business development teams, we've had virtual meetings with their cruise business teams at their corporate offices on how we're all going to work together through this pandemic and for the future to stimulate a demand in cruising for the public. We've had terminal tours with our current cruise line partners and for future cruise line partners that are not currently at Port Canaveral. We've worked with the Carnival senior team on the Cruise Terminal 3, taking them through that beautiful new terminal that's been created for the new Carnival LNG Mardi Gras that's due here in February of next year. We've went through Cruise Terminal 8 on the complete makeover for the Disney Cruise Line terminal over there that's going to be fantastic and beautiful for the arrival of the new Disney ships. We've been doing everything we can at Port Canaveral in order to keep the business going and plan for the future. We've had future business development meetings with their business development operations to look at growth for the future. We're looking at increasing our business cruise-wise tenfold for the future. An example of that would be MSC Cruises. We've been working on MSC Cruises for the past 3 years. We've worked with their corporate office in Geneva, Switzerland, with their staff in both Italy and London, and their Fort Lauderdale office. Captain John and our team, we've had virtual meetings with them during this pandemic, and we're so thrilled to announce that MSC has added Port Canaveral as a cruise port. MSC is the second largest cargo company in the world. It is currently the largest privately held cruise line in the world, with 18 cruise ships now and 12 cruise ships on order from 2021 into 2027 for the future. We look for a fantastic growth with MSC Cruises at Port Canaveral. We also look at 2021 to be a transition year for the cruise lines to slowly ramp up and to get to their pre-2019 levels of cruising. However, for 2022, from the amount of new itinerary planning schedules that we are hearing that are coming into Port Canaveral, we see a fantastic growth for the future and look towards a very healthy next 10-year growth with increased new products and increased new cruises out of Port Canaveral. We think it's very, very promising for the future, and we look forward to being a growth factor for the Brevard County, Central Florida, and the state of Florida for the future.
During the early days of the pause to the cruising industry, our primary focus was on how we can support our cruise partners during these challenging times. So in terms of vessel scheduling, our focus was on bringing in ships efficiently to support them for their ship stores, supplies, and most importantly, crew repatriation. We spent countless hours and nights scheduling and sometimes rescheduling these calls, depending on the cruise line's needs. So it was a very hectic time, but it was a time that I know our efforts were not lost on the cruise lines that we supported. we don't know exactly when it's going to start. But we do know that Port Canaveral will be one of the first or second U.S. home ports for a majority of the major cruise lines. So I think that's a real testament to our team here at Port Canaveral as well as the local community.
Prior to the pandemic, Port Canaveral was set to be America's first LNG cruise port. We were going to conduct bunkering operations in October of 2020. Because the pandemic has had such a worldwide impact, it's affected the construction schedule for the cruise ships, for the barge, even for our enhanced fireboat. So although that schedule has been delayed by a couple of months, we are still on track to begin operations coming up in 2021. And we've continued to train mariners and our local first responders at the Port Canaveral Maritime Firefighting Academy on LNG bunkering operations.
We're standing on the dock at Cruise Terminal number 3. Despite many challenges that we had in completing this project, there's still so many things to celebrate about it. It is the largest project Port Canaveral has ever undertaken at not 163, but $155 million. 4 major components: marine works and dredging, the terminal, the parking garage, even the Adelte constructed passenger boarding bridges that you see here on the dock.
One of the biggest challenges was Ivy's construction with their subcontractors. They had almost 30 to 40% of the people in their workforce that was not able to come to work. And so to make up that, they were actually working longer hours and working 7 days a week in order to meet the deadline of June of 2020 to have the terminal substantially complete, ready for the cruise ships. When the Carnival Breeze came in during construction, we didn't use the cruise terminal, but we did use the new berth that was built. And what we ended up doing is putting a temporary fence between the terminal and the berth, so the ship and the people could be on the ship side and have guards at the 2 gates on both ends so the people could come in and out for store deliveries and other items.
So CT3 was still under construction. They were still working building side. The gangways, I don't believe, had been delivered by then, so we had to work around that, put up temporary fencing so we could make a secured area. Working with Coast Guard and Public Safety, we were able to get that done so we could make that a berth we were able to utilize to get these cruise lines in and out of here.
Port Canaveral has a diverse cargo portfolio consisting of aggregates, salt, slag such as this, containers, fertilizer, lumber, newsprint, and autos. Our Cargo Business Development Department works closely with our cargo tenants, Ambassador Services International, GTUSA, and Seaport Canaveral, to increase imports and exports throughout our region. In March of this year, we had our official grand opening of Port Canaveral's auto processing facility. Our terminal consists of 16 acres and a 20,000 square foot climate controlled warehouse. Our Ro-Ro division continues to work together with OEMs, ocean carriers, and freight forwarders to increase volumes through Canaveral. We recently completed construction on a 120-foot pier extension on North Cargo Berth 8. This new berth was constructed for multi-purpose cargoes, such as heavy components as well as space components. We appreciate our strong partnership with our commercial space partners, SpaceX and Blue Origin, and we are proud to support them in their current and upcoming operational needs. In January of 2019, we received our mobile harbor crane, which is hitting record pace this year due to increase in launches.
When the COVID hit, luckily for us, our general cargo operations have really not been effective. Actually, they've been very strong. Our imported slag from Japan is very strong right now. We're having ship after ship, as well with Morton Salt with their salt imports. Both of those products have been very strong. We're still having record volumes of lumber imports from North Europe, and that continues to grow on a daily basis.
One of the things I would say about the pandemic is it was really a positive disruptor for us. It forced technology transformation for our organization. A lot of the technology that we deployed, I think we, in a different situation under normal times, we would have faced a lot of pushback from our user base. But the pandemic really forced everybody to look at technology from a different way. And the way that our users accepted the technology, I mean, they deserve, you know, a lot of credit, because it wasn't easy. You know, it wasn't easy on us, but it wasn't easy for them. But they did step up and they accepted it. The challenges that the information technology services team faced, you know, prior to the pandemic and you know, going into it, really were our workforce was tethered to their desks. They, you know, a lot of desktop computers and not a significant number of laptops deployed to our user base. Fortunately, you know, that was something that we were preparing for pre-pandemic. You know, the other events, you know, we face other types of crises such as hurricanes. And, you know, we were already in the planning stages and actually really in the rollout phase of starting to untether our users. From the customer perspective, you know, the payments were really a major challenge. You know, we go from, you know, making payments in person and really not having contactless solutions available to our customers. So looking at ways that, you know, we could rapidly, you know, deploy those solutions, and then even some of the solutions like parking as we, you know, look forward to cruise restarting, how can we, you know, create a contactless solution there too. So those were the types of challenges we had to face. Some of those, you know, it was days or a week that we had to come up with the solution. Others, you know, we're still working through some of those challenges, but have made terrific progress and are, you know, feel like we're in a really good place as the business restarts.
We had to push off those projects to evening time so we could be available to, you know, the user base during the day to help them with the work from home thing. But at night, we worked a lot of countless hours in the evening to make sure that those projects got done, because they needed to get done before hurricane season started on June 1st.
One other challenge too that was really critical throughout this was how could we go beyond the walls of Canaveral Port Authority's offices out into, you know, basically the wild and still keep our users and our data safe.
Impact on the users, it's our biggest concern. As I mentioned before, if users cannot perform their task, we may not be successful, the company may not be successful. So our deployment phase was as safe, as less destructive as possible for the company.
All of the tenants and the businesses here at the port have been impacted by the pandemic. Probably the most public face of that are the restaurants in the Cove. They were hit early on with closures and restrictions, really forcing them to modify the way that they do business when they were even able to do business. But pretty much everybody has been affected. Those businesses and tenants associated with recreational interests were obviously impacted. Even our commercial fishing tenants were impacted. A lot of what their daily catch would have been shipped to restaurants all over the United States. Happy to report that most of those businesses have found a way to operate and are open for the most part now. We do have a category of tenants and businesses, though, that are so closely tied to the cruise industry, and they are still really struggling today. Our tenants and the other businesses at the port really had to adapt quite quickly, and I was pretty amazed at how resilient they were, whether they, you know, modified facilities, made changes to their hours of operation, provided curbside pickup for, you know, restaurants, made improvements or expanded outdoor dining options. A lot of them even took time that they were down for doing facility improvements, which was maybe a little benefit of all of this pandemic. The port had a lot of resources dispatched during this time, whether it be Captain Murray and the executive team, government and strategic communications group, as well as public safety, embedded at all levels of government, state, local, federal, And as information and potential resources for tenants were made available, we were distributing that out mostly through email blasts to those tenants. Through all this, I was really impressed about the resiliency of the majority of the businesses out here at the port. And if I had to underscore one thing, support small businesses and local businesses.
We still had to keep the port running. We had all our environmental permit and compliance initiatives that we still had to do and keep on doing, including inspections on our construction projects. And also, continuing on with our existing projects, water quality monitoring, our Green Marine certification. Big shout out to our tenants who work with us and our consulting team to do our annual tenant inspections in July and August. Everybody worked really well with us to be able to get out there and safely conduct the inspections at all the facilities around the port. While some things slowed down in our community because of the pandemic, we still had almost record numbers of sea turtle nesting and injured turtles that come into the harbor as a safe place of refuge. We had a turtle that was recovered badly injured back in April. Coordinated effort between BCSO, our environmental staff, and the harbor masters, and even some of the crew on board the Carnival Liberty helped us spot it so we could rescue it. It was taken down to the Brevard Zoo Sea Turtle Healing Center, and after about a 6-month rehabilitation was just released back into the wild into the Indian River Lagoon just a few weeks ago.
That's great. Thanks to everybody that participated on the on that video. As you can see, there's still a very active port. Although we don't have the cruise industry, we still have a lot of other things going on. Let's talk a little bit more about some of the highlights, financials, et cetera, for the year. Cruise was very, very strong until the CDC, Centers for Disease Control, imposed no sail order that curtailed passenger voyages from U.S. ports. That was an order that was issued on March 14th, and it essentially shut down cruising throughout the United States. I'll be back to that in a minute. Cargo has remained steady throughout the year despite shutdowns and business interruptions due to COVID. We're very pleased with that. The construction progress in Central Florida has continued on the highway projects, et cetera, and a lot of the product that we move through the port is directly committed to those projects, so it's been good for us overall. Recreational businesses at Jetty Park, as you're all aware, during the shutdown, there were parks were closed and beaches and some places were closed, and we've gone through all of that. We're on the back end of it, and Jetty Park has rebounded after all of the state-mandated closures and is doing well. The port boat ramps is an interesting point, have remained open and were highly utilized, maybe overutilized during the shutdown when people were going out on their boat to practice social distancing on the water. But we were able to accommodate, despite the construction, at Cruise Terminal 3. We had a few minor parking issues, but not that many. And then we did have a red snapper season this year that was quite successful. We arranged some parking in a remote location, and that seemed to solve the issue, and we didn't have any complaints on that. So it was good. Real estate tenants, as Craig just mentioned, have weathered the situation, and some have been receiving PPP support, which is the grant offerings that will help them sustain on the short term. Just looking at the numbers, our operating revenue is $67.1 million. If you recall the year before when I was up here, it was $110 million plus. So a big difference, down 37%. Cruise revenue is $44.1 million, with the exception of some crew dockage. Basically, our cruise revenue stopped after March 14th, and we just had the dockage for the ships coming in, which is a very minor revenue stream. Cargo revenue is about the same as last year, but our cargo tonnage is down. And part of the cargo tonnage, a lot of that is petroleum, and the reason the revenue stayed the same but the tonnage went down is all a factor of mix. And some cargoes bring a higher revenue stream than others, and that was the impact on that. Now let's talk a little bit about each of our business models over the year, and I'm going to go start with cruise initially. You know, we started this year, when I was up here last year, I was touting how great 2020 was going to be. We were going to project over 5 million 5 million multi-day passengers this year. It was going to be a very solid year. Home ported ships were expected to meet or exceed budget. We had new itineraries and ships planned for late 2020 and 21. We had a record number of port of call ships scheduled for the summer months this year, and as I recall, we had multiple Oasis class ships coming in. It was a great year on the books. The Mardi Gras was on track for an October arrival, big celebration, and we're anticipating new cruise lines to home port and Port Canaveral, and CT3 was on track for a May completion date and a June opening. That all changed on March 14th, and on March 17th, we had our last cruise ship to debark guests under normal operations. It happened to be a ship that was barred entry in San Juan, Puerto Rico, and they came to Port Canaveral because the Puerto Rican government wouldn't allow the ship to dock in Puerto Rico, so we brought her here and got everybody home. From March to July, we were very, very instrumental in working very closely with Customs, Border Protection, U.S. Coast Guard, and the CDC to assist the cruise partners in getting crew repatriations, getting their crews off. When you take all of the passengers off the ship and you've got 1,500 or 2,000 crew members, most of those folks aren't involved in the operation of the ship. They're involved in hotel services and entertainment on board the vessel. And these folks come from probably more than 150 countries around the world if you collect all of the cruise lines and where they source their crews. All these folks had to get home. We had travel restrictions. You couldn't fly out of the United States. You couldn't fly into Europe. It was a very, very difficult situation. We had one ship with Canadians on board that couldn't get from the United States to Canada. They went to the UK and flew from the UK back to Canada. That's how difficult it was. So when Dave German said it was a lot of late nights, a lot of logistics, it was a tough time because there were so many restrictions imposed at the time on the cruise lines by the CDC as far as crew movements. Airlines weren't flying. All planes had to be chartered eventually. And toward the end of it, what the cruise lines ended up doing is putting crew members on the ships that were dedicated for quadrants of the globe and sent the ship to Asia, sent the ship to Europe, sent the ship to South America just to get crew members back to their home countries because they were unable to fly there. So it was really a very, very dynamic time. In August and September, most of the ships left. You haven't seen many cruise ships here in quite a while. They've been repositioned to the Caribbean, Europe, Asia for continued crew repatriations. Some countries still won't even accept their own countrymen back off the ships, which is hard to believe, but they still have people that are stuck on some of these vessels. Many of the ships have gone into what we call a reduced operating status. It's either a warm layup or a cold layup, depending on the cruise line, depending on what their future plans may be for the ship. And there have also been numerous fleet reductions, ship breaking, scraps, and sales to other parties. There have been 3 or 4 different European cruise lines, smaller cruise lines, that have virtually disappeared. They've just gone out of business. So it's a tough time for the industry, very tough time. Since the imposition of the no sail order, we, the port, have taken, and I personally have taken an approach that there's Navy ships, there's cargo ships, there's ships out there operating. Everybody has to deal with the COVID crisis in one way or another. Every ship has to deal with it. Why is a cruise ship different than a Navy ship? And there's a protocol and a way to manage it. And we've met with numerous parties. Some of the meetings, this is a picture of the roundtable discussion we had with the coronavirus task force led by Vice President Pence in Fort Lauderdale right at the beginning of this crisis back in March with the cruise line CEOs and the major port CEOs from Florida, both senators, our governor, everyone was at this meeting, and this is where we really all came together on what had to happen with the cruise industry for the near term. We've met with Department of Homeland Security Secretary Chad Wolf, as well as Federal Maritime Commissioners Sola and Dye on Zoom calls, the industry and the government officials, and just working this model to try and get some logic into how we can get restarted in a safe manner. We've also had meetings with Senators Rubio and Senator Scott. Both have been very, very supportive of the industry, as have all of our Florida congressional delegation. We've gotten a lot of support. We've had regular briefings with the governor's office up until just recently, weekly meetings with the Florida Department of Transportation, mostly attended to directly by the secretary. And of course, our Florida Brevard legislative delegation. We've tried to keep you all informed as to what's happening here. You're very important to us, and And I want to say thank you for all of the efforts your support you've given us in Tallahassee, because we needed it, and we're going to need some more. So we've also been pushing our message out. We've got a very, very good communications team here in Port Canaveral, and we've been able to get our message out in press conferences, media interviews with local, state, national media outlets, Fox News Service, Business News. We've had the local TV stations here. We've got 2 in the room today. So we are getting our message out, and that's been important. And we've also been collaborating very closely with CLIA, Cruise Line International Association, and Florida Caribbean Cruise Association. Those are 2 industry trade groups that support the cruise line. Most of the American cruise lines are part of CLIA, and they are the ones that put forward a 74-point paper on how to return to cruising, which is largely predicated on what some of the lines have already done in Europe to create a successful and safe cruising environment. Some other positive things is Cruise Terminal 3 is completed, and I hope you all enjoy the tour out there today. It's a spectacular facility, and I've got one more video, and you'll get to see some of it to kind of tease you before you go out there. But it is really a spectacular facility, and it's unfortunate it's been fully operational since June, and we haven't been able to use it as a cruise terminal yet. The Mardi Gras arrival has been delayed. I think Barry mentioned on the video that it was delayed until February, but it's probably going to be delayed. We don't know for sure right now. The ship is coming out of the yard. It's delivering to Carnival in December, and then it's making its way over here to Port Canaveral. But I can't give you an exact time when it arrives. It's going to depend on the latter part of my presentation on the steps that we have to go through to get our port back up and running. Also have to highlight once again, it's the first North American LNG cruise ship. Our QLNG 4000 barge, not ours, but will be chartered to Shell at the end of the month in December. And our port fireboat is under construction. It's endured 3 hurricanes this year. It's over right close to Lake Charles, Louisiana. So they've had some challenges in the construction process, but it's still on track to be delivered next month. So we'll be excited to see that. So all of our support systems for the Mardi Gras will be in place. All good news. And Cruise Terminal 8 renovation's underway, and we've got a little video of that as well, so you can see what's happening on the inside. The terminal was built back in 1998 and had a refresh in the early 2000s, but really it's our smallest, or was our smallest, and oldest, one of our oldest terminals here at the port. This refresh has really taken it way ahead and up a big notch. So we're really excited about that. It's been because of the downturn in the industry, has given us a chance to go in there and knock that project out with the contractors in a much more expeditious and cost-effective manner, because originally we were going to have to be moving ships around at different terminals, et cetera. So without any of that disruption, we were able to go in there and just knock it out. So new gangway will be delivered in December, also in a Delta gangway manufactured in Barcelona, and we expect this facility to be up and running by April. On the cargo side, I'll touch on this. Central Florida is driving our cargo throughput. As I mentioned, the aggregates, the lumbers, the highway projects, it's kept us strong through the summer. 381 ships versus 361 last year. We actually were up in revenue versus 2019 by about $300,000. We continue to support space operations, booster recoveries, and we have a booster out here today for those of you that missed it on the way in that just arrived. And we've got fleet operations and berth utilization for the space industry as well. I do want to mention Ambassador Services International. The international part might be new to some of you in the room that are familiar with ASI. Long-term tenant, Randy May's in the room. Just want to say thank you, Randy. It's the company is now owned by a new company called Instructure. Brian Hubert is a shareholder in the new company, and he continues to run Ambassador here at Port Canaveral. But the new organization has a lot of great potential cargo opportunities for Port Canaveral, and it's a good fit, and we're really excited for this transition. And we've already seen some new business arrive through the port just this past Friday as a result of the new relationship. So we're very, very excited for that. So our tonnage last year, 4.8 million. You can see our lumber was up 26%. Slag was down, aggregate down. Slag was down more of the timing. We didn't have any vessels in September. But then we more than made up for it in October. So we're doing very strong again. But for those of you that look at Mount Canaveral on the north side, that slag pile actually got down to nearly nothing for a while. But it was a matter of the ships just were unavailable to bring the product to the port. So we're back up on that. Petroleum is largely driven by jet fuel. Planes aren't flying. We were a big supplier to Orlando International for the duty-free jet fuel that moved under our tax-free agreement. And without the international jets flying, there is no jet fuel moving through. So gasoline, diesel, those are just doing fine. Have to just talk about our strategic partnerships. I've mentioned this in the past. I'm not going to dwell on it today, but we do get a lot of support at this port from our elected officials, Florida House, Senate members, U.S. Senators, House members. We have strong relationships with federal and state agencies. I'm not going to read them all off. I also have to thank our commission. We get a lot of support from you guys, and believe it or not, that makes our jobs a lot easier when we know we have your support and you have our back. So I want to thank everybody for that. Moving into the partnerships, a couple of examples here. That's a picture of our fireboat over in Lake Charles between storms. It's a $4.6 million fireboat. Arrives next month, as I mentioned. We have a $1.5 million state appropriation, thanks to our Brevard delegation. Thank you again for that support. We also have a $1 million FEMA federal grant that we were able to apply to that boat. So it is covered almost, or a little more than half the cost of the boat is being covered with our grant structure. We also have a federal grant for port security, port-wide risk prevention, threat mitigation, security response. For those of you that like to drive around the port sometime, see if you can drive around the north side and not hit a yellow stanchion. They're everywhere. It's amazing, but it's a safety issue. Nobody's going to drive a vehicle or any type of a threat into one of our terminals with these stanchions. It's really pretty good, but they're everywhere. On our other partnerships, we've had federal grant. First time we've been awarded a grant of this magnitude. Our North Cargo Berth 3 renovation rehabilitation is a $37 million project. We were awarded a $14 million U.S. DOT Port Infrastructure Development grant this year. It was quite remarkable to get a grant of that size from the federal government, the largest this port's ever gotten. We also have $14 million in Florida DOT funding as well for that project. So if you add the two up, we're $9 million shy of where we need to be. And we were intending originally to fund that through cash from operations. That's probably a bit of a stretch for us right now, but we do have some other grant opportunities that we're chasing. And I believe we'll have that project mitigated down to a very small sum that we'll have to fund from operations. So we're quite excited to get that dock built. You'll learn more about it in a minute. Our environmental stewardship continues. As the video with Bob, we continue with Keep Brevard Beautiful, our outreach programs, our water sampling. We're still certified Green Marine. It's a voluntary program. We're one of 2 ports in Florida, and the environment is still very critical to our success in the future and to all of our port relationships and partners. So here's the video I promised, and I'll let you go from here. This is a little bit of what we got to look forward to.
As far as the future goes, as the organization comes out of COVID and, we see cruise restart and, different business lines start to really, kick back in. I see, particularly in cruise, I think the major initiative that we've been focused on there is related to parking. And we're introducing a new solution at Cruise Terminal 3, which is e-pass parking, so that our customers, when they drive into the garage, and instead of paying for their parking with a credit card, they'll be able to just drive up and use their e-pass or their SunPass transponder to pay for their parking. So it's a contactless payment option. I think that that's going to It's a customer service item. It really helps our customers, not have to, fumble for a credit card. They're just able to drive right up and the gate opens for them and their payment's made and they're thinking about what they should be, their cruise. Within the terminals, I know our cruise partners are going to accelerate the contactless options that they have for embarkation and checking passengers in. That had already started pre-COVID, but I think you're going to really see that accelerated. It's going to become the norm. And same, as they return, facial recognition for clearing U.S. Customs was already starting to become the norm. That's going to be the norm. You're not going to be spending a lot of time waiting to be cleared.
Our team has been working diligently with our cruise line partners almost daily in terms of vessel scheduling for 23, 24, and beyond. Our discussions include things like new ships, new itineraries, new cruise lines, new terminal renovations, and even new terminals. So I can confidently say that the future is bright for cruising at Port Canaveral.
We were recently awarded a grant from the U.S. Department of Transportation to rehabilitate North Cargo Berth 3, which has been considered functionally obsolete. This reconstruction will help our current cargo tenants, Lehigh Cement and Morton Salt, as well as future business opportunities for new cargo customers at Port Canaveral.
I've been at Port Canaveral since late 2014, and even early on in my presence here at the port, I noted that North Cargo Berth 3 and its sister Project 4 were in need of repair. And I'm very enthusiastic about we have finally reached that point, working in concert with the federal government for that Port Infrastructure Development Program grant, $14.1 million, and the state of Florida, another $14.1 million grant from FDOT. Along with our own matching funds, we will be able to accomplish that berth in FY22. It is an 880-foot-long berth that we're going to reconstruct with a relieving platform. It will open up the channel width in that area across the harbor from Cruise Terminal 1. We'll gain an additional 75 to 80 feet of vessel beam. We'll have the ability to accommodate up to a 131-foot wide vessel at that berth, which again is just going to augment and support our cargo portfolio here at Port Canaveral. There's lots to talk about on the North Cargo Berth 8 project. First off, it's a heavy lift berth, so it's our only berth here in Port Canaveral that will support that 2,000 pounds per square foot. It will accommodate the mobile harbor crane being driven over to that berth for service. It has 4 basic components. The original bulkhead was constructed by Orion Marine for about $19 million. We did Uplands paving for $4.5 million, this pier extension for $5.5 million, and that's the first 120 foot. We have a 4th component, which is another 180-foot pier extension that's currently on hold. We hope to bring that back in the near future, and we've had state of Florida support on all of those projects as far as grant funding, and it has culminated in a very usable, multi-user berth facility that really augments Port Canaveral's cargo portfolio. We're very excited about it. I was over at North Cargo Berth 8 earlier today and witnessed it's currently being used by commercial space entities. So not only does it have a length overall of 900 feet, it can also fit several of the smaller vessels that are currently retrieving boosters, capturing cone fairings, and other crew support vessels as well. And it gets used regularly by the commercial space industry. The Terminal 8 renovation project is just that. It's a renovation of an existing terminal. This terminal was originally built in 1998, so it's over 20 years old. And these renovation projects are notoriously challenging. We have to make the new fit the old. We are constantly discovering items in walls or unforeseen conditions that we didn't know were there. And so that's been a challenge for the project. But the contractors have done a great job of overcoming them. And let me also mention the designers. We have a team of designers on this project that have really guided the design well over the past several months. We started this project in early 2020, and the contractor has made substantial progress. What you see behind me is a new POV drop-off lane, and the canopy is being built to match the existing drop-off canopy that was built over a decade ago. So it's this interesting mix of making the new match the old, and the contractor really is doing a fantastic job. Early on in the project, we did have to make some changes to the overall program. We put our heads together internally with our finance team. We also reached out to Disney Cruise Line. The project started with a $47 million budget. We had to find a way to carve out in the interim and defer approximately $11 million worth of work. So we currently sit at about a $36 million budget. That $11 million worth of work that we deferred could be brought back at some point in the future. The components that we deferred were an exterior luggage screening hall, some expansion to the interior concierge area, that's the VIP area, and also some renovation work at Cruise Terminal 10 was deferred as well. What we're standing in front of right here is an 11,000 square foot expanded arrivals hall for Disney Cruise Line's Terminal 8. We have built the new to match the existing vernacular. You can see the twisted rope trim across the top. The tall rotunda in the background is part of the existing structure from 1998, along with the functioning clock. And we're surrounded by this grand new plaza with landscaping planter bed, new palm trees, areas for guests to gather prior to entering the terminal. New carpeted floors, charging stations for modern devices. The existing ticket counters used to come all the way to this end. We cut the existing ticket counters back to make more room for seating. And we've spent to date probably $165,000 renovating the floor. That existing terrazzo floor that was put down in 1998. A lot of time and effort's gone into polishing it, repairing it, cracks, repairing inlays. We're on the pier out here at Cruise Terminal 8, and part of this expansion project includes marine work renovation as well. I want to point out a couple of different things out here on the dock. One is the location of the new passenger boarding bridge. So if you pan around, over by that white truck, you'll see the foundation, and also above it, you'll see the building penetration where that new passenger boarding bridge is going to hook up. It will come over from Adelte in Barcelona, Spain later this year, early December, nearly fully assembled. They'll set it in place, do the final connection, do the commissioning late this year, early next year. Both the gangways will be able to operate at the same time. Then ultimately that existing gangway will be demolished. You're joining me at the front entrance to our new Cruise Terminal number 3. Despite some ongoing paint repair, we're repairing a multi-layer intumescent paint system that's going to cover the steel structure of the new gantry area. Once complete, later in the month of November, you will see the final finished product of Cruise Terminal number 3. I want to point out a couple of other features for you right now. One is our multi-story parking garage that's capable of nearly 1,800 parking spaces. It's connected to the terminal entrance by an elevated passenger walkway that has a canopy over it to protect our guests from the elements. I'm going to take you on a bit of a virtual tour right now. I'm going to start with this area behind me. This is intended to have airport-style kiosks. They call them incomplete kiosks. It's where guests and passengers will be able to come in, finalize any check-in and boarding documentation before they pass through security. Then we're going to take a look at the main security area, and you note how expansive it is. There's plenty of room for social distancing plans. Passengers will queue up. They will stage in front of our security screening machines before they go into the general boarding area. A few details that I want to point out about the particular finishes that we have in this terminal are the lighting. So we're going to look at our ceiling. The ceiling is coated with a special deep blue Carnival Blue Fall paint, and it is lit by cloud and halo LED lights, which adds a very nice modern feel to the terminal. We have this centralized LED marquee that will display welcoming messages from the cruise line for the guests, and it surrounds this beautiful tile inlay of the Carnival logo and a north arrow. So as you look at the Carnival logo, this is actually laser cut tile that's been pieced in here and placed, including all of the various letters and stars. So very intricate tile work. We are flanked here by a series of photo booths. And you see the photo booths have that ornate metal structure above them. There will be a series of backdrops provided at each photo booth by Carnival of various scenes from their private islands or shipboard. So families will pass through security. They'll be able to come into this area, take their photos before going into general seating. You're joining me now in the general boarding area. We have about 1,200 seats to accommodate our guests. As you look around, you'll see the high-end finishes that have been incorporated, many of them selected by Carnival Cruise Line staff, complete with the palm trees, the bench-style seating. Again, you see the halo lights above. Several seating areas with side tables. Would you follow me into the VIP area? Again, I want to point out the contribution from local artisans and craft people. April Slater is a local artist that was responsible for hand painting this aluminum wagon wheel structure above you. It might look like wood grain, and in fact, it is very, very difficult to tell the difference, but that is an aluminum clad structure, sits over the VIP area. There are smaller versions of it throughout general boarding. And April and her crew worked many nights to hand paint that wood grain finish. And I think you'll agree with me, it looks fantastic. In addition to April's work, another local sub was Rockledge Design Services, RDS. RDS was responsible for a lot of the ornate metal features that you see. The blue plexiglass areas here were cut by RDS. Again, it is a very well-appointed VIP area complete with media screens, bench-style seating, pub-style chairs, coffee maker, a small food and coffee bar, and even the tile that's around that central area there matches the tile on the new Mardi Gras vessel in the cabins. Following our brief stay in the VIP area, once the vessel has been cleaned and ready for guests to board, the VIP guests will proceed through this set of double doors. They'll go down this long hallway before they board the mobile passenger boarding bridge that ultimately leads to the vessel. General boarding guests will come out of this set of double doors in front of us at the right time, and again, go down this long hallway before getting to the mobile passenger boarding bridge. I want to point out a few features about the marine works here at the project. The area that you see before you used to be over water, now it's been backfilled. We have a berth that is 1,300 feet long, complete with bollards and fenders, water stations. You see the runways for the mobile passenger boarding bridge wheel path. The combination of the multiple sets of sliding doors along this hallway, in addition to the Adelte bridges, gives us really an infinite number of shell doors, vessel door heights that we'll be able to service at this terminal. Another key feature I want to point out is that the parking lot we're standing on is built on top of concrete stormwater retention vaults. The port paid a premium of about $3.8 million for that stormwater system that allows us to maintain the recreational boat parking for Freddie Patrick Boat Ramp. And that's very important for the Port Authority. All in all, it's been a wonderful project. It's a labor of love for many of us. I can say that we are very enthusiastic about the arrival of the Mardi Gras, Carnival's new XL class vessel that's going to come mid-January. And beyond that, we are very enthusiastic about the return of passenger cruising to Port Canaveral Cruise Terminal 3.
I'm assuming that's for Bill Crow's acting there. I mean, I think he deserves an Academy Award for that one. No, thank you. I think that's the good news looking forward is we've got 6 terminals that are ready to go. We get cruising up and running, and we've got some of the most exciting facilities available in the cruising industry right now. So let's get into a little more detail. Near-term priorities, we're now looking forward, is workforce retention. Obviously, that's a challenge in times like this. People start wondering about their future and looking elsewhere, and our goal is to make sure we don't lose key assets to our organization that really make this port happen. We need to protect and manage the assets that we've built, the terminals, the road infrastructure, everything that we've done here. We need to make sure we maintain it, and that is a challenge without the revenue stream from our cruise operations. We need to continue to pursue new business development opportunities, new cargo, cruise, and land-based customers. We've got properties that are leased here in the port, and I'm pleased to say that we're dealing with a number of new potential customers at the port. So excited about that. Cruise schedules for 22, 23, and even 24. There are some major changes coming in the cruise ship mix. There are still a number of new builds that are being delivered, and many of those ships will be put into play in the Florida operations, and we're trying to poise ourselves to be front and center on obtaining some of these great new assets from the cruise lines. We also want to leverage our partnerships for business expansion. The ASI example is a good one. We work very closely with Brian and his team to try and leverage whatever we can to get more business in Port Canaveral, and we see some great opportunities for the coming year, and we're really very excited about that. We also continue our support requirements for commercial space. That industry is growing. The launch cadence for SpaceX has been quite heavy this year, and we've had so many boosters being returned, and they come off the dock with our mobile crane and return to refly, that it's become no one's taking pictures anymore because it's happening so often. So I think that's a good thing for us, for the industry, and for space in general. And LNG for maritime. We are out in front. We talked about it last year a lot. It's kind of like gotten lost in the conversation with everything else in the last year, but we are out in front on LNG for maritime uses. The QLNG 4000 barge, as I said, was mostly completed in the spring, and they're doing sea trials with it today, and I believe next week they're heading up to Jacksonville. They're going to start doing gas testing with live loading out of the facility. So we're really excited to be a leader on that front. Let's talk about cruise a little bit more now. I talked about the no sail order from the CDC. It expired on October 30th and was replaced with what they call the conditional sail order, effective October 30th, 2020 to November 1st, 2021, a full year of this new order. Certain provisions of the no sail order will remain in place, such as certification process for individual ships. Each one is color-coded. Any COVID or influenza-like illnesses are on board in a certain period of time. It goes from green to yellow to red. A red ship can't come into a U.S. port by CDC orders. Yellow has a wait time before they can come in. When it's green, then it's allowed to arrive and depart. That's not changing. That stays in place. I will say that all of the ships that we've had calling Port Canaveral in the past few years, not all of them have been cleared and are in this certified process. So in order to come back to Port Canaveral, some of them will have to go through this process. There's also total restrictions on crew movements. The crews are not allowed off the ship once they're on board. So there is a challenge for the cruise lines because, people now are going to get on a ship. They know they're going to be on it. If they're on for a 9-month contract, they're 9 months on that ship. So there's some new challenges that we didn't have to deal with in the past. Just to give you a little sidebar on some of our tenants that are really feeling the pain with the cruise industry being down. We've got Crew Express on the north side of the port, which caters to all of the crew members, and they have their meal delivered there. It's a place people can get off, grab a sandwich, whatever, and congregate. And their business, of course, without the cruise ships, is down to zero. When the cruise ships come back, all outward appearances are now, it will stay at zero until November, or maybe even longer than that. If the crew members can't get off the ships and they're not allowed on the ships, that really destroys their business model. American Cruise Aid Logistics, right behind this building, is another great port partner of ours, delivers supplies to the ships. Well, if the ships aren't moving, they're not delivering many supplies. So they've had a particular hard time as well. And the one that I'm going to highlight, because I think it's important, and two of their members are in the room here, the Canaveral pilots. You know, there's 9 pilots in Port Canaveral, and with the number of ships calling right now, I'll let them speak for themselves, but 9 is a tough number for them. And if you look to the future, when these cruise ships come back, you need 9 pilots. So how do you get from A to B when we get started again? And that's a challenge. And you know, some of our tenants, as I say, are feeling a lot more pain than others. And the pilots is not a tenant. Well, they are. They rent a berth, but beyond that, they are really feeling the pain. I just wanted to highlight that. Another aspect of when cruising gets restarted, it's zero COVID tolerance on board the ship. So the CDC protocols are going to be very, very rigid on what happens if there is a case on board, and that goes back into that color-coded scheme. The other part about setting the course for the future with the conditional phases, the initial one is going to be shipboard testing process. All ships will have testing facilities on board. There will be, you know, we've learned a lot about this as we go along, but they will be required to do PCR testing. Passengers will be tested before they get on the ship. They'll be tested when they get off the ship. Crew members will be tested before they get on. Sometimes in some phases, there's multiple testing before people can get on the ship. It's going to be very, very strict. It's going to be tightly managed. There's going to be plans that have to be designed right now on social distancing on the ships, use of masks. How the cruise lines are going to operate is very, very dependent on how well they conform to the CDC technical guidelines that are being written and issued as we speak. There'll also be simulated cruising before there are any revenue guests on the ships. Every cruise line is going to have to have a simulated cruise. They'll be accepting volunteers at some point, might be friends and family, whatever. They cannot accept revenue on these voyages. Totally voluntary. And the way that guidelines is going to be 1 or more that they will have to complete in order to resume passenger operations. It's going to be a very slow build-up. Like I said, 100% testing passenger and crew, fewer guests, talking about 50% capacity limitations when they first start. Shorter cruises, there will be no cruise longer than 7 days, at least through November of next year. So that changes some of the cruise line itineraries as we've known them. The changes, as I mentioned, the policy changes are in development. The approvals for everything I just mentioned will come on a ship-by-ship basis, not fleet-wide. So if Royal Caribbean gets one of their ships cleared, that's great. That doesn't apply to any other ship in their fleet. So every single ship has to go through the simulated voyages and all the testing criteria, testing on board. It all starts with the crew. The crew will be tested. There's a timeline for that. Then it'll evolve to the simulated voyages, timeline for that. Then it'll evolve to the guest services. Sequential phased processes. The requirements for prearranged agreements with ports on medical providers and others. The cruise lines will all have to have, not public, but private ambulance services, medical facilities, even places to bring any crew members that might be sick or passenger guests off the ship, have a place that they can go that will not overwhelm the medical facilities within any particular community. That's a tricky thing to figure out because in the ports we have to be involved in how many ships can safely be in Port Canaveral at any point in time. And there's some pretty complicated formulas you have to think about on that, because if you got a 3,000 passenger ship, that's not 3,000 passenger potential going to a hospital. There's asymptomatic, there's people that aren't sick, and then there's going to be a certain percentage when you drill down far enough that might need shoreside medical care. And that's not something we as a Port Authority are going to calculate, nor are the cruise lines. This has got to come from the science that the CDC has, and what are those numbers, and they need to be realistic, otherwise we'll never get cruising started again. But I think everybody right now is pulling in the right direction. We've had discussions ourselves with CDC, and I know the cruise lines now are all having very active discussions, so I think we are moving in the right direction. There'll be protocols for crew movements, passenger movements, outbreak prevention, and management. A lot of work to do. But we're finally talking and moving in a direction which is positive. The technical requirements are still in development. Once again, onboard testing, all crew and passengers. When I say onboard testing, testing facilities on board, they don't have to send anything ashore. So first off, that's a challenge for the cruise lines. They have to have an FDA approved test, and they have to have the approved FDA equipment on board. So sourcing that for every ship is one of their current challenges. The cruise lines will be responsible for virus identification, containment, and management will be robust. And the standards and technical requirements are ongoing. The CDC is issuing them, and through the dialogue, they'll be changing them as we go along. So that conversation is being held, and that's good. Outbreak management plans must involve, as I stated, local and state departments of health. Something different from past operations. So getting past the cruise piece, which is finally getting started, and we're in the very beginnings of it now. So I'll give you an update at a subsequent commission meeting. But for right now, we're continuing to build our future on new and emerging technologies for improved efficiency. A couple of examples with the garage, the contactless payments at Jetty Park and other facilities here. We're moving with other industries to get to that total contactless environment that is quite desirable by many people right now. Our infrastructure investment, we need to continue to think when we build, we need to build with flexible capabilities. I'll give you an example, North Cargo Berth 8. When we built that, we built it with the concept that we could move a heavy lift ship there, a roll-on, roll-off ship. We can move space product, or we even have it such with the bollard designs that we can use it as a passenger berth for a cruise ship. So we have to start thinking like that. We only have a few remaining sites to develop in our port, and we need to make sure that they're flexible, and as we need to do something different, we have that nimble ability to change direction. And investing in resiliency. I know one of the issues in Tallahassee now is sea level rise, and what does that mean if the ocean comes up 2 feet in the next 40 years or 3 feet or whatever? All of our ports in Florida now have to go through that and make the estimates before we build anything if it's going to be receiving any state funding. So there's a whole new level of looking at the future and how we invest in our infrastructure. We need to also think of connection to commerce, roadways, bridges, and be cognizant of connections outside the port's scope of responsibility. There's a huge impact, as Senator Wright will probably tell us about in Tallahassee on what the receipts are. When you don't have tourists in the state of Florida, the state budget takes a nosedive. And we're already seeing some of the effects of that in the Florida Department of Transportation budget, and projects like us deferring our projects. They are now at a point where they're reviewing their receipts and starting to defer projects. So it's going to be an interesting session in Tallahassee this year as we look forward to subsequent years with less revenue stream for the foreseeable future. And as always, we want to be measured, financially responsible development, strong organic growth. I've repeated this slide every year that I've been here, and I continue to repeat it. Add value and provide support to our port business partners. We all work in this port together, and we need to support one another. And one of my goals is to make sure we can always keep our port partners supported any way we can from our aspect. That's what we're here for. And protect our foundations of success and position our port to meet future demands. That is the bulk of my presentation. I did want to do one last thing here I think is kind of important. I want to thank everyone. I want to thank our delegation for coming today. I thank the commissioners for coming. I want to thank all of our employees who have been keeping the duct tape on the engine right now. So it's been a lot of support. Couldn't run this without our great staff. And I want to thank our port partners. We've got some great folks in this port that run their businesses and they're dependent on us, and we're dependent on them. And I just want to thank everyone for being there. And I want to thank of course our state and national legislative bodies that have helped us through this difficult time. One more thank you. Last year, the format for the State of the Port was very similar to what we did last year. But a lot of people don't know. Is that last year we've got a communications team here that worked, and we had an outside party help us last year to put the port, the state of the port together. As you recall, we had it over in Cruise Terminal 10, I believe. But after the fact, we ended up getting 2 Telly Awards for the production of the, and we don't apply for these. The folks that did the production last year did the application, and we won one for, gosh, I can't read it, Steve, hang on. But we won 2. It's pretty good. They're called Telly Awards, and we won one for Best in Government Relations, and the second one for Best in Cinematography. So what I really wanted to do now is just say, we couldn't use the folks that helped us last year because we're on a very, very tight budget right now. And I want to thank our communications team, specifically Steve Linden, who I think shot almost every video on there and put it all together. And we did this all in-house. And I want to thank you guys. It was well done and really appreciate it. So that's where we are. Let's keep our fingers crossed for a stronger 2021. And we've got all of the vehicles in place to do that here at Port Canaveral. So we just got to keep plugging along. Thanks.